Welcome to On and Off the Mic with Mike Corey.
This was certainly one of my favorite episodes to date, catching up with one of the all-time greats who, in my opinion, doesn't get as much credit for the job he does and how long he's been doing it. Brad Nessler is recognizable to so many. Just a great delivery, he doesn't overdo it, and you just feel comfortable watching games that he's on. And when you've worked in the NFL, the NBA, and some of the great games in college basketball and football and the SEC, you're going to have some awesome stories, and Brad certainly does. From ESPN, CBS, the places he's been, the people he's worked with, we had a lot of laughs on this episode and a great time talking about many different topics. Enjoy it. So what happens when we get a little bit of a break? What do you have to do? What's on your docket?
You know, usually, Mike, it's like a honey-do list, and I would blame my wife, but it's my own list, and it basically involves doing all the stuff around your home that you never get a chance to do during football or basketball season. And in your case, it even goes longer because I know you do more sports than that. But it's never ending, and it's unbelievable. And I guess I shouldn't complain that I have a lake house and a regular house. But between the two places, that's all I do the whole month of, like, after the Final Four, and the whole month of May is try to do all the things that I haven't gotten accomplished the rest of the year. So when June hits, I'm ready to just relax, although I haven't really caught up completely so far, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. Now, where are your spots? I mean, you're in Atlanta, right? And then would you have a lake house too, right? Or am I in the right area?
Yeah, you're in the right area. We have kind of a weird situation. Most people have a lake house like an hour or two away, something like that, so you can get away. Mine is literally a 13-minute walk or about a 4-minute drive. So the good part about that is if you get to the other place and you go, honey, we don't have any mustard, you can just drive home or you can drive to the store, whichever. But yeah, kind of weird. We have two houses very close together, but in very different atmospheres. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's all you need, right, man? It's just like a little bit of a getaway. Feel like you're off in another world.
Right. Our private lake we live on, where our lake house is like Jurassic Park. You get out there, and a lot of people don't even know where it is because it's kind of a little fishing village that the people in Atlanta used to drive 25 miles north if you lived in downtown Atlanta. And there's this little pocket of loveliness that we're fortunate enough to have a place on. So that's our getaway. And like I said, it doesn't take far to get away to it.
Yeah. How long have you had that? Have you always been in that area? No, for as many years as you've been doing this, where have you been?
I mean, the house I'm in now, we've been in since before our daughter was born. I think Reese.
Yeah.
34 years in the same house in one spot, and the other place we've had for about 13 years. So yeah, we're just in the same spot, and we can kind of stay a little bit away from Atlanta's notorious traffic where we are if you time things right. Let's put it that way.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. But your daughter's great. We love Reese. She's been, I probably had her on about maybe a good 10 to 12 games I've done over the years. And we love hanging out, and she does an awesome job with us in the booth. And I know you got to be very proud of her. She's a good girl.
She's ready for football to start right now. This kind of slow time for her. So yeah, she's ready for the season to begin.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you? Has she ever? Does she work with you at all a lot, or is it normally other crews?
Normally, well, now that I've switched networks, but she did on SEC tournament games in basketball for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. I think she was probably with me, which I totally enjoyed, and she probably worked harder trying to please me and do her job than she would with anybody else. So they were always kind of worried, well, maybe she'll slack off. I said, it's the exact opposite, man. She wasn't going to disappoint Dad. So yeah, it was great to work with her.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I was just talking to somebody today asking me about what I like doing better, football, basketball. I do lacrosse in the springtime. I know, of course, you're a big football and basketball guy. But what about that for you? Like, if somebody asked you that question, how do you break it down? I mean, you're at sometimes a different level, obviously, than many of us. But what's your take on the sports and the games that you do?
First of all, I'm glad people ask you that too, because I get it, constantly, and I'm not really sure what to say. And it depends on the season that I'm answering the question, probably. If you ask me right now, I would say football. I think, and you know this because you've done so many games, there's more preparation involved. I think the reward you get out of it, the gratification you get out of it's probably a couple times more than basketball, just because, there was times when I would do 3 basketball games in a week when I was at ESPN. I do Super Tuesday. I might do the Thursday night game and then do a Saturday game. So, you're just kind of going from one to the other, and you appreciate them all. But I think when you work all week on a football game and you put so much effort into it, and by the time you get done with a 3.5-hour game, depending, could be longer than that if you're doing the Big 12, I don't know, or whatever. You get done, and that the feeling of satisfaction, I think, out of football is probably a little bit deeper. But now, if you ask me in March or April, or doing the tournament, I'd say, man, I'm having a blast doing hoops. Those first 4 games on day one is not necessarily the most fun thing in the world, but it depends on when you ask me, I guess. But I'd go with football first and basketball second. So let me ask you back: which one do you like better?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I love doing the football because, like you said, it's big. It's once a week. You're geared up for, people are, ready to go for the weekend to watch the games. But it's just so much work. And in the college landscape, double numbers and, 120 guys. And, here comes Bobby. And now with the new rule of, like, you can play 4 games and then redshirt. It's like, oh, okay. So everybody's available, right? You know what I mean? It's like,
exactly. When I did the NFL Network games for 3 years on Thursday night and then did college games on Saturday, I think if you would have asked me then, I would probably say basketball because I was overloaded, man, when I was doing those. It was a blast. I loved every minute of doing the NFL too, but doubling up, doing 2 a week, only, basically a day and a half apart was probably the most challenging thing I've had to do, I think.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember when you were doing that. I mean, at least I guess with the NFL, you kind of feel like, even for any person, period, if you're a fan of it, you kind of know the players and you know them anyway. You know what I mean? So if you're watching, you're like, oh, yeah, I know his number and that's so-and-so, and you know his story. And there's only 50-something guys, and you can actually see their numbers. And there was an injury list where you're definitely playing or you're definitely not, right? It's like, what's different is that? What is that like working on the NFL compared to college?
It was a lot. I don't want to say easier because, it's a big production and all of that. I don't want to slight anybody, but it is easier to do than college. And just because of what you said, you're worried basically on a 53-man roster about maybe 30 guys. You got to worry about special teams and all that. I get it. But you're kind of knowing what their numbers are from where they're attacking from. You don't have, for the most part, defensive linemen wearing 3, and that kind of thing. So, you kind of know where people are coming from. When you saw a blitz, you figure it's going to be a 50 or, or whatever, instead of some crazy number that you get in college.
Right.
You don't have double numbers. You're right. You can see a lot better because the sight line at NFL stadiums is all fantastic and you have a huge booth to work out of. So all those things factor into it compared to getting on maybe a smaller campus, or you don't have as much help from the SIDs instead of the PR guys, whatever. And as much as I do, is those guys are your biggest asset, really.
Yep. No, they are. I've done some games where, it's like, okay, this is what we got. Well, we're not going to be talking too much about this team today,
right.
but
exactly right.
It's the way it goes. And, you think about it too with coaches, right? You would wonder, and I know they're probably inundated and they get a million asks and questions, but it's like, this is your opportunity to tell us what you want out there. Like, right. Utilize it to your advantage. Like, we're going to ask you questions or whatever. Like, take this as like, well, hey, here's the message I'm going to put out there, instead of being like, nah, I don't want to talk to this guy, or make up fake stuff. Because then it could just get misconstrued. Like, some coaches I feel like get it, and some are just, I don't know why they act that way sometimes.
I don't either. And, it doesn't, it's that way. Regardless, you just have some guys' personalities are that way. And I've said that personally, almost exactly what you just said. I've said that to people. I said, we're not here to put you guys down. You think we're ripping you on the air or whatever. We want your team to look good. We want both teams to look good. We want to look good ourselves. So anything that you're trying to suppress, that's all you're doing out there. And then some guys get it. Really, really get it. And those are the guys that show up, at the NFL draft and the NBA draft, the Caliparis, the Sabans, all those kind of guys. Now, they may be guarded in what they tell you, but they're at least going to tell you something that you can put on the air. and or at least help a little bit. And, and then they show up at the NFL draft, the NBA draft, and you think recruits don't see that? I mean, I don't get why some of the coaches want to be so guarded and be such hard asses about everything when really they're hurting themselves.
Exactly.
They really are, because kids nowadays are so socially conscious. They look at a coach like that and they go, man, I want to play for that dude. I don't care if he pushes us, to the very, very limit in practice. At least I know that he knows what he's doing, and he's going to put us in the best light and make us the best athletes we can be. So you're right. I mean, you get to some of those guys and boy, I could name some, and I know you can too, and we're not doing that here, but sometimes I do in private, and people go, oh, really? I thought maybe he was really a good guy.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. I know. Yeah. We would, in private conversations for sure. But, and you know what, and when you're doing college, I mean, it's the best. I mean, you've got the best game. I mean, the SEC, I mean, it doesn't even compare, right? I mean, it doesn't, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, you probably can, because you do it, compared to any other conference in college football. How amazing that league is.
It really is. And it is kind of hard to explain. And, even in my last, I don't know, probably 8 years at ESPN or whatever, I was basically doing SEC games probably 70% of the time. The thing that Todd and I and Holly always looked at, and Phil and Scott and our whole crew, we'd look at it and go, but we didn't get the first choice. Because that's
yeah, right.
When I went over there, that was a major difference. I can already look at the schedule, and with the exception of probably 2 weeks, I could almost pick out what the games are going to be, unless there's some weird situation where somebody takes a dive early in the season that you expect to be good, or maybe somebody you don't expect to be good all of a sudden is. We can almost look at the schedule and kind of pick it out and go, I think we're going to be there. I think we're going to be there. So from that standpoint, and and I like I said, I looked at it in a different light when I was at ESPN, but when I got to CBS, I'm never worried about having a bad game. Let's put it that way.
No, exactly. Even
there's kind of one weekend in there, where it's like, that's not so good. But other than that, you don't have to worry about it too much.
Right. Even the number 2, 3, 4 game in that conference, you're still gonna have a million people watch it and people care, even if the team's like 2 and 5,
Exactly.
It's still, it's still big time. I went down to LSU as a fan. This is like back in 2007. Like I was doing Delaware football and basketball on the radio at the time.
Right.
And we have a couple of bye weeks. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, let's go watch big time college football. I'm like, I want to just go watch a big time game on our off week. I mean, it's fun here. We got our 22,000 sold out, and Delaware was good at the time and had Joe Flacco and won a couple of championships. So, but I'm like, let's go to LSU. So we get there, it's me and my buddies, and we pull up, it's a night game in Death Valley, we pull up like, I don't know, maybe like 11:30 in the morning, maybe 12 o'clock, and we're like, we didn't know what we were doing. We had like some sandwiches from like the local place, and we're like, can we park here? And this guy's like, yeah, man, you can park anywhere you want. It's like, we're thinking like paying all this money. No, he pulled right in, and he's like, you're not from around here, are you? I'm like, no, like we're not. Like, he's like, where are you from? I'm like, well, we're from Delaware. He's like, Delaware, the Blue Hens. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, come on over. And like, we literally met this guy and his friends at this tailgate with their DirecTV satellite dish up, TV, food, all this stuff. And that was our home base for the day. We walked around, went to the RVs.
It's the best.
Food, T-shirts. It's unbelievable. I'm like, we were like late. We were there at noon, and we were late for the 8 p.m. game.
That's what I was going to say to you. If you got there at noon, you're about a day behind. That's the cool thing about Baton Rouge is that, we get there on Thursday and go to practice, and then Fridays all days meetings and everything. But Thursday night, you kind of get out among everybody. And, I don't know when they start letting you park there. Like the Grove at Ole Miss is a little bit different. They have like a certain time when the tents can go up. And at that minute, those tents are up in 10 seconds, But LSU, you like pull your RV in there on, Wednesday morning, and you start making jambalaya and start drinking. And by 8 o'clock on Saturday night, it's a scene. Now, you don't have to have a football game there. You could just go outside and have a blast.
Right. Oh, it's amazing. This guy had this like refrigerator that he turned into what was called the smoker, and he had like ribs and chicken. He opened it up and it was like hot. He had like racks of ribs and beef and stuff. I'm like, this is unbelievable.
It's one
So
of the
yeah,
greatest. It's one of the greatest places, especially at night, that there is. And a lot of people probably ask you too, what stadiums do you like and everything. I like them all, but there's certain places that have a charm about it, and that's one spot that's pretty hard to beat.
Join our friends from the Delaware Kids Fund and Harvey Hanna and Associates for the 10th annual Delaware Kids Fund 5K in Newport, Delaware on Saturday, August 3rd to help fight childhood hunger. To register and for full info, visit dekidsfund.org.
I always liked doing Oklahoma and Texas. That was just a weird scene, the State Fair of Texas. And at the time we had Bob Goodrich was our producer, and he was the biggest fried food freak in the history of whatever, and we would go in there, and on Friday, one day he had 13 corn dogs in one day. I mean, and he wondered why he had, indigestion and problems with this and that. And then he'd, top it off with fried ice cream and all that. But I love that scene. I love getting there early in the morning and having to basically get a escort through the crowd on a golf cart or whatever, and people are yelling at you, and whether they're Longhorn fans or Sooners fans. That was a great scene. I always love that. I'm just getting used to Florida and Georgia because I never had a chance really to do it for the most part, except the last couple of years. That's another scene where it's, blue on one side and red on the other, and it's kind of a cool situation. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of bad spots. Going to the Big House or doing Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, Wisconsin. When I did Big Ten, just all over the place. I mean, I think I've done every rivalry there is, and then I thought I'd done it all until 3 years ago when I did it my first Army-Navy game, and I was like,
oh yeah,
whoa, this is cool. So that was a topper. It really wasn't on my bucket list, and actually it was 2 years ago. Vern did it 3 years ago, but 2 years ago to do that in Philly, it snowed. You were talking about not being able to see numbers. Army comes out in white uniforms with gold numbers, and it snowed 5 inches. So you got nothing there. And that's the day that my spotter, who's my college roommate, as a matter of fact, I think I kissed him about 10 times when the game was over, because I don't think we missed much. And with those two types of offense, and with the weather conditions we had and the jerseys and numbers we had to deal with, it was pretty remarkable. But I don't think I'll ever forget my first Army-Navy game. That was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, you just added right to how amazing the thing would be, period, if you were able to actually see it and you have that whole situation as well.
Yeah, we could see it a little better this past year, but I don't think it had the same charm as the one where the snow was falling. It was cool.
Right. That's awesome. And you know what? I guess none of us will ever really know what it's like for that rivalry unless you ever went to Army or Navy, because when you talk to any of those guys, and I'm sure you know when you talk to them before the game, they could care less whether they were 0-10 on the season as long as they won that game. Like, I don't know. I can never – you don't know it. You don't know it unless you were a player.
The best thing we did is the first year we did it, we went to both – campuses, if you want to call it that. But we spent a day at each school. And so we ate with the kids, spent time with the coaches, obviously, but we went to the mess hall and did the whole thing. And so you get at least a flavor of it that way. And then you get some of the backstories on these kids that, either military backgrounds or their grandfather, grandpa, or, mom, dad, whatever. And the fact that, they might have come in as offensive linemen and they weighed 235 pounds. And then there was guys that were, NFL prospects, because over the course of their time, they built themselves into football players, and what that game meant to them. And then the whole deal that, we're all on one team when the rest of the year, except for 2.5 hours, not 4.5 hours for that game, but except for that 2.5 hours, everybody's on the same team, kind of protecting us and all that kind of stuff. And then singing the alma maters together and following each other from one end of the field to the other. You get a better grasp of it if you've spent the week with them, but certainly unless you are, enlisted, like you said, you never get the feeling. But you get as close as you can to it, and you're just like flabbergasted at how cool that is.
It really is. No, it's fun. You get energized each week. I mean, somebody asked me about, with doing this for a career. I mean, I was just kind of fortunate. I really wanted to do it ever since I was like in ninth grade. And I guess the thing of it is that, it's always a different game. It's always changing. It's always new, and it's not work to us, I mean, I know you have to work to get ready for it, but when the game's on, we're even during the week. I mean, it's fun. It's not work, and it's always different. I mean, I think that's what I liked over being in the studio or doing something like that, which I really haven't done much of. I mean, I don't want the same thing over and over. You never know what you're going to get, right? Each week. It doesn't matter.
You don't. And the other thing I like about it, and I've always enjoyed it the most is, I don't think I could have ever been, I wouldn't have been any good at it, but let's say in high school, I don't think I could have been a wrestler because it's all on you. You're part of a team and you're part of putting points together, but it's just you, and it's the same thing with golf. You're golfing against other guys and you might be on a team or a college team, but it's you. I just like being part of a team, and that's what our crew is, and every crew I've ever had. I've been blessed with, great analysts and great sideline people and unbelievable talent in the truck and all that kind of stuff. But I like the whole idea that I don't think a lot of people realize, just general fans, and I know you probably get this sometimes. People go, oh, you just show up and you talk for 3.5 hours. That's kind of not how it works, I mean, we have a game plan just like the teams have a game plan. Now that game plan changes about 2 minutes into the game when things go haywire and you go, now you're adjusting on the fly. And the challenge of that's what you're talking about, I think, is it's never what you think it's going to be. Even if you're right, you can sit there and gloat for a couple minutes and then the game changes and you go, well, we kind of thought it was going to go that way. But it took a U-turn on us, and it's going the other way. And to adjust and be part of a team and be able to reassemble, kind of how the game's going to fly and whether it changes in the second half, third quarter, whatever. I just love that because it's a challenge to yourself, and this. There's nobody that wants to be better at what you do than what you are thinking about yourself, and that's the way I've always thought about it. And I don't care, people like us or don't like us or whatever. If I go home and I think, geez, I think, we kind of kicked ass, that makes me feel great. If I go home and think I did a crummy job, I'm almost ready to start getting back to work as soon as I get on the plane. Yeah. But the feeling of kind of the game plan didn't go as planned, but we pulled it off anyway, that feeling's pretty awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I love listening to you and watching you, and I've always appreciated like your delivery and kind of the way it comes across where it doesn't sound and like a broadcaster, like you're talking, you're doing you don't give unnecessary info. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I think a lot of guys aspire to understand with you when you hear that less is more type of thing, but you come across where, hey, I'm giving you the info. I'm delivering it in a fun way. It's easy, enjoyable to listen to. I mean, I don't know, for whatever reason, as long as I've watched you, it's like I don't ever think like you're overdoing it, and I think that's a credit to your skill. That's awesome.
That's a great compliment. I appreciate that a lot. My wife kind of listens to games. She has it on in the house, and she doesn't sit down and watch because she could care less. But she hears kind of how Todd and I did it, or Bob and Lynn and I did it first, and then Todd and I did it for 8 years together, whatever. And Gary and I, this is we call it our second marriage because we worked 8 years together the first time, and now we're going into number 4 or whatever right now. And she said, you guys just have so much fun. You're just a couple of doofuses sitting around drinking beer, talking about football, and you're having so much fun doing it. And that's kind of how we do it, I guess.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear. And my wife's kind of the same way. Like, she's not a huge sports fan, but she'll pick apart some of the things that I couldn't get from other people who are all about the sports and like the language and the technicality. She'd be like, well, why are you moving your hands up that high? Like your hands are so big, they're interfering. Like, keep your hands down, And then she's like, what are you doing? Like with that look about, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so like, she's really given me a couple of pointers that, I'm not going to get from my buddy, Bob or Joe. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So she's got her own little way of, helping me out.
You get your best on camera criticisms from your wife, without a doubt. There's not even a close second.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, right? Okay, so for the longest time, and I couldn't figure it out, it was like when you came on camera, you address the camera, you're talking to the people, and then you turn to your analyst and you talk to them. Now, I can't remember offhand, like with how you do it, because I'm not looking at a video of it, but we'd always want to look back at the camera, and it would always be weird, like trying to find that like look, and I'm thinking to myself, finally one day with her help a little, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, wait a minute. If we're having a three-way conversation with, say, you, me, and a buddy of ours, and you're talking, we're both looking at you. Right. I don't all of a sudden just look back at my buddy for no reason while you're still talking, right? So I thought of it this way for the camera. I come on, I'm talking to the camera. When I toss it to my partner, I'm staying looking at him. Now he's talking to both me and the camera. So he's looking at me, he's looking at the camera, he's looking back at me, but I don't look back at the camera for no reason. Like I just stay with him because he's talking. So to give people the perspective, and I know it's funny because he's one of the best in the business, we all know him and I love him, is Joe Buck. He's got to be the biggest culprit of them all with that, right? He's like, hey, welcome to the game. All right, what do you think, Troy? And as soon as he says that, he looks back at the camera with some weird, smirk on his face, and then goes back to Troy. I
could have sworn that's the road you were leading me down, because that's what I was envisioning when you started saying this. So
right.
Everybody does it differently, but you're right. Joe has a tendency to get it to Troy. Troy looks at the camera. Joe goes right back to the camera.
Right. You don't need to, because I've done this before where the guy looks back at the camera and then you're looking at him and you cross each other up. No, just stay. Your partner's the one that's talking, right? The three-way conversation. Now he looks at both people when he's talking. You're just looking at him.
I know. Exactly. And now, we're kind of part of the pregame a lot of the times with Adam and Rick and BJ and stuff in our studio. And so they never tell us what they're going to ask us. And half the time we don't hear them very well unless we wear headsets. We wear IFBs, and sometimes it's just so much noise in an SEC stadium, even that far before kickoff, just with the bands and all that kind of stuff. And so sometimes we have no idea what they've said to us, and Gary and I look at each other, and we just start answering, and we're not sure if we're even answering the right thing. So now you got three guys talking to you from one spot. You're talking about one friend. We got three friends there. And then Gary and I are talking to each other, and then we're turning back to three friends, and we don't even know who we're turning back to. That one really kind of crosses you up. But you're right. For the most part, stay with your guy, then turn back, talk some more. And if he's going to talk some more, that's fine. But he's the one talking to the two people. You're just talking to one until you talk to your partner.
Yeah, that's how I eliminated worried about what I need to do in that look back, because it always looked weird because you shouldn't be doing it, But
you nailed it, man. You nailed it.
That's just so funny. Yeah, and the other thing, like you mentioned, like people talking in your ear and that kind of stuff. I don't think people, they're not supposed to understand. I mean, they're just watching the game. This is what we do. Like we don't know what goes on in the kitchen to get our steak out. They just do it.
Yeah.
So you're, it's like you never really tell anybody about it. But like whenever you watch a game, don't you kind of feel this as well, where if somebody says something incorrect or messes up? I mean, as a play-by-play guy, you almost kind of feel for them because you're like, you know what? He's probably looking down his chart. The guy was in his ear. His analyst is talking. The stat guy's giving him something. The monitor's showing this. He's looking at the game. And people were like, you had all that going on? Like I was just watching the screen.
Right.
So
there's a lot of action going on, and then they don't realize some of the time when you're in mid-sentence, and thank God for talkbacks, right, Mike? You know that.
Right.
So, sometimes there might be a little conversation going on right in the middle of a sentence, and I might be talking like this, and then get back, and you realize that I just swore at the truck or something. So it takes a really good talkback box and all of that to I've been blessed that there's been times that had I said to the truck what I said into my microphone would not have been a good choice. But I try to just do that like once a year. When I was like your age, I did it a lot, and I thought, man, I'm still getting away with this. I think I better lighten up a little bit.
Well, that's what Brad's talking about is the talkback button. So you have this box in front of you. You've got talkback and you've got cough. If you obviously hit the cough button and hold it down, it mutes your mic so you can cough and nothing goes over the air. Right. You hold the talkback down. It's a direct link to the guys in the truck, so you can talk to them without going over the air and get your comments out. Right. The funny part when I first started doing radio was doing football with Tubby Raymond at Delaware. And it was great. We had the one little box that had the cough box, and I said, Coach, coach. I go, now, if you need to cough, you hold this button, and then you cough, and it doesn't go over the air. And he's like, oh, okay. And then we're doing the show, and he's talking, and then he's like, and then he presses the button, and then we keep talking. I go, no. And we got to. It was like, no, it's not a delay. It's not an after the fact. You don't hit the button. You're gonna hold it as you're coughing, so it doesn't go over the air. And he's like, oh, okay, I got you. God rest his soul. He was one of the best.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you have like a coach or players that you're particularly just like how you've gotten to know over the years, probably doing the same games, or they've just become really good friends that I guess will call or text you, or you catch up with them when you're in the area? I don't know if that's been that way.
Yeah, I did so many. Gary and I, the first time together when we were doing the Big Ten games at ESPN, we hit a stretch where Wisconsin all of a sudden got really good. I mean, they were better than Michigan. They were better than Ohio State. And, it was Barry Alvarez. And we did so many Wisconsin games in a single year that, like Barry would come to – I'd go to his golf tournament. He'd come to mine that I had in my hometown of Minnesota and all that kind of stuff. And we had a stretch where a couple years we did their games all the time. And so I'd go sit with the coaches, sometimes the night before the game and have a beverage with them and kind of shoot the breeze after we already had our meetings with them, just because we were friends. And to this day, we're friends. And I think that kind of trickled down to when Brett Bielema took over. So Brett and I are still good friends. He's not coaching college anymore, but I think he will be eventually if he doesn't end up being the defensive coordinator of the Patriots or whatever he wants to do. So there were two guys, and they both came out of the same area, Wisconsin, because, they spent time with my family in my hometown. I went to do all their stuff in Wisconsin. So just because of the proximity and the amount of games we did, I think. Mac Brown's a really good friend. We kind of started off when I was doing ACC games for Raycom. Early in my career, I'd do North Carolina games. Spurrier was at Duke, as a matter of fact, so there's some pretty good coaches there. But I did, a lot of Mac's games, and then when he went to Texas, obviously did a ton of games. And he and his wife Sally, and Sally is a friend of my wife Nancy. So, you get some personal relationships. There's not a lot of those, and when you get them, they're really fun to have. I just heard from Andy Kennedy the other day that, used to be a basketball coach and probably will be again soon, but is a really good analyst right now. And he was just looking for a favor for a little kid that's a friend of his that had some surgery and stuff. So, there's a lot of relationships behind the scenes that I guess are pretty cool. And you don't even think about it because you just think, well, they're friends, and if you mention it to somebody, they go, oh, I didn't know you were friends with him. Next week, I'm going down to the Manning Passing Academy because Archie and I have been friends forever, and he invited me, and I thought, well, that's kind of a bucket list thing to do. It's just a guy's deal, and you get to see all the college kids and all the up-and-coming high school quarterbacks, and, you hang around with the kids and watch them practice, and at night they go to bed at 10:45, and Peyton and Cooper and Eli and Archie and I and a bunch of people will sit up and have social hours. So
awesome is that? Yeah. I mean, who gets to do that? That's unbelievable, right? That's good for you.
I'm pretty fired up about that. I think it'd be fun, and I don't get a lot of those kind of things. I used to go on fishing trips all the time with buddies, and my wife's like, "You don't do that anymore." I said, "Well, I have the same friends, but they don't even live around in the same area anymore." And so, when Archie asked me this, and I said, "I think I'm going to go down to Louisiana for the weekend." And she goes, "What are you going down there for?" I said, "Because Archie asked me." She goes, "Go for it. I'll have a girls' weekend. You have a guys' weekend." So. Yeah,
that's great. I think I can't believe like Peyton Manning's just got to be one of the funniest, coolest dudes, for sports athletes of all time, right? I mean, is that guy? I mean, is it really just how we all see him? I mean, he just seems so cool.
He really is. And, Eli's a quiet one. What people don't realize, and I think they probably have now because I don't watch like the Fox pregame show on Sunday, but I think Cooper's on there. Cooper's actually the funniest guy in the whole family, which is
really okay.
He's the oldest. And then he handed it down to Peyton. And then I think Eli just said, how do I try to top these two knuckleheads? They're really funny guys and they're fun to hang around with. And I haven't spent as much time around Eli as I have obviously with Peyton and Archie, and I've had time to spend some time with Cooper, but I'm looking forward to it because I want to see Eli behind the scenes a little bit more because all the time I've spent with him has been, for the most part, as a football player, both at Ole Miss and then when I did the NFL with the Giants. So he's kind of straight-laced, but, he's still got that funny side. He's done the Saturday Night Live gig and stuff too. But Peyton on TV, on the commercials, like I could sit and watch a half an hour of Nationwide commercials.
I know. It's great.
Like, really? Golly.
Yeah.
And the looks that Brad Paisley gives him, every new one is just more precious than the first one. So anyway.
Those are awesome. We'll probably have to catch up on another one of these down the road after you have that gathering, and we would probably just do one whole show on the Mannings. Like that could be just like one whole.
I'm looking forward to it. It starts on Thursday, ends on Sunday. I'm going down Friday morning, so I'll miss just one Thursday practice. But the best throwing session is Friday afternoon, so I'll make that, and then the practice is on Saturday, and then have a skills competition and all that. And then Cooper, I think, gives out the awards on Sunday morning. So I'm going to be there basically for the whole thing.
That's awesome. No, have a great time with that. I just had a couple more that I wanted to mention because you talk about relationships, and I think back, and I'm trying to remember all these guys. You mentioned Gary a bunch of times, Gary Danielson, Todd Blackledge. You work with Mike Mayock. We're talking football. And then, you go to the basketball analysts. I mean, what about Dick Vitale, Bill Raftery, Jimmy Dykes? I mean, what a crew of guys. I mean, what about the connection and the relationship you have with all those names I just mentioned?
Well, yeah, it was unbelievable, really. For 22 of the 24 years I was at ESPN, some of the time I did almost all the games with Dick. And then, it got down to where we did, he kind of worked with everybody. And so, just a couple weeks ago when he turned 80 and everything, I had seen him, first of all, at the Sports Emmys when he got the Lifetime Achievement Award. So, he got out of his seat just about when they were ready to introduce him. And I sort of intercepted him on the way, what I thought was going to the stage. And I go, Dick, where are you going? He goes, oh, Mr. Nessler, I got to find the men's room. I got to go, Brad. I got to go. I said, okay. I said, go through that door and it's to the left. And so he came back, and he basically got back just in time almost for them to introduce him. And then he was fantastic. I mean, I've seen him speak so many times at charity events and all that kind of stuff. And even in my hometown, in my little golf tournament, he's been there. He was fantastic. He was emotional. He was really funny. He was so grateful for getting the Lifetime Achievement Award. And working with him was a blast. And then you got Raft, and I do all my December games with him because the other guys are off doing NFL. So when the college game first starts in December, I've got that too. And so, you hump, hey, what a pound! Look at the onions on that guy. So I got that, and he won Best Analyst at the Emmys. So I was kind of there for those two, and it was pretty awesome. But Jimmy and I still keep in touch. Great friend Sean Farnham and I, great friends. I've been blessed with great guys in every sport, and basketball included, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you're going to win Best Impressionist because, when you spend all that time with those guys, you got to have it down. You have it down. That's like two of the best.
You talk about some of the stuff Dick says off the air, it would kill you. It's so funny. Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, a whole nother episode. I'm fortunate I got to work with Jimmy Dykes on a couple of games, one earlier this year at the Virginia game, so that was kind of neat. But
good game.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's some great partners you've had, and hey, man, it's awesome talking to you, and just thinking about all this stuff, and how long your career has spanned, and it's going strong, and you're having fun, and hey, what more can you ask for, right? It's been great.
I have more fun doing this than I have my hobbies, Mike. So I'm not going anywhere for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, man, Brad, thanks so much. It's great catching up with you, and hey, have an awesome summer, and we'll catch you around probably during the football season.
You got it, Mike. Thanks for having me, man.
Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. And you can follow Mike's travels all year long on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on the web at Mike Corey Sports.